Good morning, and today is December 3rd, 2018, and today we begin a three-part series examining the genealogy of Jesus Christ, or the coming of the promised seed, which we learned about yesterday in Genesis chapter 3:15. Again, due to Adam's fall, man has been spiritually separated from God since the Garden of Eden, but God promised the seed of the woman who would crush the serpent's head. So far, this is the only messianic prophecy, the only messianic information that we have is again found in Genesis chapter 3:15. God just simply tells us about the seed. The promised seed would come from human lineage, the seed of the woman, and would one day be the promised Redeemer. So each one of us has ancestry, or a family line that traces us back to our beginning. This is called your family tree. Now today there are some pretty neat websites, pretty neat companies that can help you trace your family line based on records or your DNA even. You can send in your DNA to a company and they can tell you about your past. So for most people, you're pretty fortunate if you can go back 4 or 5 generations, your great-great-great-grandparents. But the further you go back, the less information there is about your families. But today we're going to read about God's chosen man through whom the promised seed would come. So I want to read to you today Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 4. The Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household, to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you I will curse. And all peoples on the earth will be blessed through you." So Abram went, as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. Also, Genesis 22, verse 18. "And through your offspring all the nations on the earth will be blessed, because you have obeyed me." So God called Abram from his land into the land that God would show him. Abram, which is his name before God changed it to Abraham, is the first of a new race of people called Hebrews. The word Hebrew in Hebrew means one from beyond. It's the word Ivri, and it means one from beyond, which is exactly what Abram was in the lands where he dwelt. He trusted God and he followed God's call. He followed his command. We find this word Hebrew first used in Genesis chapter 14, verse 13, referring to a people group. Abram was given many promises because he trusted in God. And throughout chapters 12, 15, and 17, which really make up what is called the Abrahamic covenant, God makes many promises to Abraham. In chapter 12, verses 1 through 4, God promises him that he would make him a great nation. And in him all the families of the earth would be blessed. In chapter 15, verses 1 through 6, God adds to the promises by saying that one will come from his own body to be his heir. Up to this point, Abraham and his wife Sarai, which would be Sarah, they had no children. Also in this section, God not only promises Abraham a child, but that his descendants will be as the stars of the sky. In Genesis chapter 15, verse 6, a verse I would encourage everyone to read, Abraham believes in God, and this is credited to him as righteousness. But before we get to chapter 17, I want to just talk for a second about chapter 16 of Genesis. Because Abraham does something that shows, well, he wasn't trusting in God fully all the time. He kind of had a falling down point in chapter 16. he was told that he would have an heir from his own body. But he was now 85 years old, 10 years had passed, and he and his wife Sarah were still childless. And as we sinful people often do, sometimes we take matters into our own hands rather than waiting on God's perfect timing. Abraham fathered a child through Sarah's handmaid, Hagar, and he fathered the child Ishmael. Now we're going to talk more about Ishmael tomorrow because Abraham kind of throws a wrench into God's simple plan. Abraham goes and makes it complicated. But in chapter 17, God settles Abraham down again, and he reestablishes his promises or his covenant to him. Another 14 years have passed between Genesis 16 and Genesis 17, and Abraham, since he took matters into his own hand, 14 years has passed. So in chapter 17, verses 1 through 17, God again adds to his promises to Abraham. He promises that he will be the father of many nations, that kings will come from him, and that this covenant or this promise he's making with him will be a covenant for all time. So in verse 17, God affirms to Abraham that this heir, the nations and kings, will come from Abraham's wife Sarah. In 1 year's time, God will make this prophecy come true. Abraham will be 100 years old and Sarah, his wife, 99. Now back then, people obviously lived much longer lives, but even Abraham and Sarah are amazed that a child will be born to them in their old age. Now we would all have to agree that this is the first of what will become two miraculous births in the plan of God. So today's prophecy is an expansion of the seed promise of Genesis chapter 3:15. From Genesis 12, 15, and 17, we know that Abraham will be the one through whom all the families of the earth will be blessed. God has chosen Messiah's family line, but as we're going to see tomorrow, Abraham, again, we're going to talk a little bit more about this Ishmael plan of Abraham's that kind of confused the simplicity of God's plan. So tonight, if you would like to do some reading, please again read Genesis chapter 12 verses 1 through 4, chapter 15 verses 1 through 6. This is the foundation of the Abrahamic covenant. Please read all of chapter 16, which is the birth of Ishmael, and chapter 17, all of chapter 17, which reaffirms and adds to the Abrahamic covenant. So today was kind of a full day. There's a lot going on in these early prophecies. So please tune in tomorrow to find out how God is going to narrow this family line of Messiah even further. So until then, thank you for watching.